In this video, I'm breaking down the real science behind riding faster for longer. Whether you're training for a century, racing competitively, or you're just trying to hold speed deep into a ride, this is about building the kind of fitness that lasts. I'm Damien Roos, a professional cycling coach, and after helping hundreds of riders improve real-world performance, I've learned that durability isn't just one workout type. It's the result. Now, this isn't strictly a durability training video, but everything we're covering supports it, directly or indirectly. So here's exactly what we'll cover today: bike biomechanics, targeted training strategies, essential nutrition, recovery techniques, and gear advice that actually matters. By the end, you'll know precisely how to improve your durability, ride stronger for longer, and avoid wasting money on unnecessary gear. So, what does it really take to ride faster, longer, and stronger? Let's start with the basics. Your position and how you move on the bike. It might not be as flashy as power meters or deep section wheels, but it's the foundation of everything. And if it's off, you're basically riding uphill into a headwind forever. First up, saddle height. It's not glamorous, but it's one of the easiest ways to either boost your efficiency or ruin your knees. Research shows that a saddle height giving you around 25 to 30 degrees of knee bend at the bottom of the pedal stroke is the sweet spot. It's efficient, powerful, and less likely to land you at the physio. Now, let's talk about pedaling, and no, you don't need to make perfect circles. That whole pull up on the pedal advice sounds technical, but it turns out it actually makes things worse. Studies have shown that forcing yourself to even out the pedal stroke actually reduces your overall efficiency. Your body's smarter than that. It naturally finds a rhythm that works, mostly driven by the downstroke, and that's good enough. Don't overcomplicate it. Just do what's natural. So cadence is another hot topic that gets way more attention than it deserves. The truth, most trained cyclists naturally fall in a cadence range of around 80 to 100 RPM, which is exactly where you want it to be. Self-selected cadence doesn't tank your efficiency. In fact, it helps you manage your fatigue. So unless you're spinning at 130 or grinding at 60, you're probably fine. Ride how your legs want to ride. And finally, posture. Upper body movement is just wasted energy. Flailing shoulders, rocking hips, balancing torsos, none of it makes you faster. A stable core and a quiet upper body help keep your power going where it should, into the pedals. Think of it like this: the more still you are above the waist, the more efficient you are below it. Put all of that together, it's the first thing to fix before chasing any high performance gains. Training zones and intensity distribution, also known as why riding easy most of the time actually makes you faster. And no, that's not a trap. Let's talk about intensity, specifically how hard you should actually be riding to get faster. Because if you think smashing every session is the key to better performance, I got some bad news for you. And some very good science. Structured training isn't just for pros. It's how you go from I survive on hills to I own them. And the first piece of the puzzle, training zones. What are training zones really? Whether you use heart rate, power, or just a well-developed sense of suffering, training zones are tools to help you understand how your body responds to effort and how to target different adaptations. But training zones are like training wheels. They're helpful when you're starting out, so they help you understand different effort levels, but don't let them become a rigid constraint. Your body's response and how you feel at different intensities matters more than strictly adhering to zone numbers. But here's the thing most people miss. Zones aren't rigid boxes. They're built around physiological thresholds, and those thresholds sit on a continuum. So let's break it down with the two most important markers. LT1, which is the first lactate threshold, also called your aerobic threshold. This is where lactate just starts to rise in the blood. Below this, your body clears it easily, and this marks the top of zone 1. LT2, the second lactate threshold, also called the anaerobic threshold. This is where your lactate spikes rapidly. Above this, you fatigue quickly, and this is the bottom of zone 3. These thresholds divide intensity into 3 key domains. Zone 1, moderate, below LT1, it's a conversational pace. Zone 2, heavy, between LT1 and LT2, this is tempo to threshold. and zone 3 severe, above LT2, VO2 max, and aerobic efforts and sprints. Forget 5 or 7 zones for now. These 3 domains are how exercise scientists model performance, and it's how we're going to do it too, because they're simple and they're powerful and they're all you need to understand the big picture. Training intensity distribution, how you actually use these zones. Here's where it gets interesting. Studies on elite endurance athletes, whether they're cyclists, runners, rowers, show a surprisingly consistent pattern. The majority of their training is in zone 1. We're talking 75 to 80% of total training time is spent cruising in low intensity. That's the polarized model, 80% easy, 20% brutally hard. The middle zone, zone 2, gets minimal attention. The goal is to build an aerobic monster with zone 1 and then sharpen it with short focus blocks of zone 3. But it's not the only option. There's also the pyramidal model, which prioritizes zone 1, but includes a little bit more time in zone 2. Think longer tempo and threshold work with less extreme top-end stuff, but it's a bit more balanced. And many athletes naturally fall into this pattern without even realizing it. And here's the kicker. A 2025 systematic review and network meta-analyses found that for cyclists, both polarized and pyramidal training produce similar performance gains. No magic bullet, just smart distribution. Periodization, structuring the season, also known as stop training like it's Groundhog Day. If training zones tell you how hard to ride, periodization tells you when to ride hard and when to back off. It's the antidote to doing the same training every week and wondering why you're still getting dropped on climbs. Now, here's the honest take. Periodization isn't perfect. In fact, the scientific foundation it was built on has basically crumbled. Researcher John Keeley points out that much of the traditional periodization theory relies on outdated stress models, like Hans-Selye's general adaptation syndrome, that don't hold up under modern science. And if you're wondering whether one method of periodization is better than another, there's no clear evidence either, no magic formula. Periodization is a framework, not a prescription. So why use it at all? Because it still works. Not as a rigid system, but as a flexible strategy. It helps you progress without burning out, it creates rhythm, it builds confidence, and most importantly, it gives you a way to plan for performance while staying responsive to how you're actually feeling. A modern take on periodization. Don't think of it as a strict calendar with color-coded phases. Think of it as a training storyline, one that unfolds based on your fitness level, your event goals, and recovery needs. Here's the updated cycle that I use with most riders. Transition is 1 to 2 weeks where you are looking to shed fatigue. There's no pressure, no targets, it's just easy riding and recovery. There's preparation, 2 to 4 weeks, where you ease back into consistent volume, but you keep intensity low because this sets the stage for what's to come, which is base. 6 to 10 weeks, where you build aerobic fitness with the highest sustainable volume and low intensity work, sprinkle in strength training and technique, and introduce some intensity, threshold intervals and tempo blocks. There's the build, 4 to 6 weeks, where you introduce high intensity VO2 max, group rides that push you, and this is where fitness gets specific. Then there's peak and perform, 2 to 3 weeks. You dial it in. You reduce the volume, you keep intensity sharp, and you arrive fresh for your goal event. Then there's a taper, 1 to 2 weeks. You back off training volume by 40 to 60%, maintain intensity, and let adaptation catch up. Note, for beginners or recreational riders, this entire cycle may just be 3 or 4 months. But for advanced athletes, 5 to 7 months is often ideal because the fitter you are, the more you can do and you should do, and more time you should spend building. Use it as a strategy, not a rule book. One of the smartest shifts in modern coaching is moving from a rigid periodization to an adaptive periodization. What does that mean? That means monitoring fatigue, performance, and motivation, and adjusting phases based on how you're responding, not being afraid to repeat a block or cut one short. You're not a spreadsheet. You're a biological system. And as Keeley puts it, applying simplistic, rule-based decision-making to inherently complex systems just doesn't make sense anymore. Cycling economy, efficiency matters. Also known as why riding better sometimes beats riding harder. Cycling economy is one of the biggest contributors to durability because the more efficiently your body can turn oxygen into speed, the longer you can hold power without falling apart. But let's get one thing straight. Having a big VO2 max is great. Having high threshold power also great. But if your body burns through oxygen like a cheap diesel engine, all that horsepower won't take you very far. And this is where cycling economy steps in. The performance metric nobody brags about on Strava, but it's one that quietly separates the really good from the just okay. Cycling economy is a measure of how much oxygen your body needs to produce a given amount of power. And if you can hold 200 watts using less oxygen than the next rider, then you've got more fuel in the tank, more room to breathe, literally, and a better shot at finishing strong instead of falling apart at mile 85. And here's where it ties together. VO2 max is the size of your engine, your maximum oxygen uptake, but economy is how efficiently that engine runs. You can have a big VO2 max and still underperform if you're bleeding efficiency. On the flip side, an efficient rider with a moderate VO2 max can hold higher speeds for longer simply because their body is better at turning oxygen into forward motion. In fact, even among riders with similar fitness, those who are more economical tend to perform better. A study by Hopker et al. In 2010 found that among cyclists with the same aerobic capacity, those with better cycling economy posted significantly faster 40-kilometer time trial results. So how do you actually train this? Some of it's biomechanical. We've already covered how bike fit, natural cadence, and stable upper body help reduce wasted motion and oxygen use, but a lot comes from training. Low intensity volume builds mitochondrial density and makes your body better at producing energy aerobically. Strength training improves force production, reduces the oxygen cost of pedaling, and helps you stay efficient under fatigue. And even small improvements, just 1 or 2% in economy, can mean holding an extra 10 watts or simply finishing a long ride feeling fresher. The takeaway: don't just chase power numbers. Train your body to use oxygen more efficiently, and you'll unlock speed, endurance, and resilience without needing a bigger engine. Strength training for cyclists, also known as why squats belong in your training plan, even if lycra is your thing. Strength training isn't just about power, it's a durability multiplier. The muscle you builds resilience, it maintains posture, and it delays fatigue. So let's get honest here. Strength training has had a pretty rocky PR campaign in the endurance world. For years, the thinking went, lifting weights is going to add bulk to me, and bulky is bad for cyclists, and cyclists should look like climbing goats, not like gym bros. But here's the twist. That was all wrong. Done right, meaning heavy, low rep training once or twice a week, strength work doesn't slow you down. It makes you faster. So let's look at the data. In one study, cyclists who added heavy squats, 4 sets of 4 reps, 3 times a week for 8 weeks, improved their economy by 4 to 5% and could ride longer at their max aerobic power, 17% longer to be exact, without any change in VO2 max. The translation here: same lungs, stronger legs, better results. Another study found that 12 weeks of heavy leg training with 3 to 4 sets of 4 to 10 reps twice a week increased their 5-minute power after a 3-hour ride by 8%. Meanwhile, the control group, no improvements. Nada. So here's the kicker. During those long, fatiguing rides, the strength-trained cyclists actually had lower heart rates and lactate levels at the same power output. So not only were they producing more power, they were doing it with less effort. That's not fitness, that's efficiency under fatigue. That's gold in any race scenario. So how does this actually work? Strength training improves muscle fiber recruitment, it enhances rate of force development, and it makes your tendons and muscles more resilient. You get more power to the pedals, you waste less energy wobbling around, and you reduce your risk of injury along the way. It's win, win, win. And the best part? You don't have to live in the gym. 2 sessions a week is all it takes, especially during the off-season or a base phase, to see benefits. Focus on compound movements like squats, deadlifts, lunges, leg press, and work in the 4 to 8 rep range. Lift heavy enough to challenge your body, but not so heavy that you can't walk the next day. When you're in season, you can scale back a little bit to once a week or even every 10 days to maintain strength without overloading your recovery. Fueling: carbohydrates and energy availability. Also known as stop trying to ride on vibes and coffee alone. Durability falls apart fast when fueling fails. If you want to ride strong for hours, carbs and hydration are non-negotiable. Let's be real, fueling is one of the easiest ways that you can mess up a ride. You can be fit, focused, and flying and still blow up halfway through a long day because you didn't eat enough. If you've ever experienced the sudden existential despair known as bonking, you know exactly what I mean. And here's the truth. Carbohydrates are your primary performance fuel. End of story. High-intensity riding leans heavily on stored muscle glycogen and blood glucose, and once those run low, so does your power. That's why sports nutritionalists harp on carbs like your grandmother with your winter coat. Daily fueling. If you're training hard, your daily diet needs to match. The general recommendation is 6 to 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day when your training volume is high. Higher carb diets have consistently been shown to improve training quality and overall performance because they help you avoid that slow, creeping fatigue that comes from chronically running low on glycogen. One study even showed that bumping carb intake from 5 to 8 grams per kilogram improved time to exhaustion by 20% in cyclists. That's not a marginal gain. That's a whole extra chunk of race you get to stay in it while everyone else fades. And don't just wing it before a big ride. The recommendation is 1 to 4 grams per kilogram of carbs in a meal or snack about 3 to 4 hours beforehand. You want to start fueled, not play catch up with gels halfway up a climb. During exercise, if your ride's longer than 60 to 90 minutes, fueling on the bike isn't optional, it's essential. Carbohydrates help you hold power, stay mentally sharp, and actually finish strong instead of crawling home on fumes. And here's the kicker. The latest science shows you can absorb far more per hour than we used to think, if you do it right. For most endurance rides, you want to aim for around 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour, but if you're going long 2.5 hours plus or hitting high intensities, you can push that up to 120 grams per hour as long as you're using a combination of glucose and fructose. This isn't just a sports nutrition hack, it's biology. Your body uses different transponders to absorb each type of sugar, so combining these two increases your carb absorption and reduces the chance of gut distress. Practically speaking, this might mean a bottle with 60 to 90 grams of carbs using a glucose-fructose mix, plus a gel every 20 or 30 minutes, or it could mean a combo of drinks, chews, and solids, depending on what works for you. Post-ride recovery nutrition. Fueling doesn't end when you unclip. After a hard ride, your top priorities are replenishing glycogen and stimulating muscle repair, and timing helps accelerate both. Here's the updated target. Carbohydrates, 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram in the first hour. Protein, 30 plus grams post-ride. While older studies suggested 20 to 25 grams of protein was enough, newer research shows that higher doses, up to 100 grams, can support prolonged muscle protein synthesis over 12 hours. Tromelin and colleagues showed that only 15% of the additional protein was oxidized, so the vast majority was still used in this study. So yes, that smoothie still matters, but you might want to supersize it. Hydration, staying fluid, also known as why just drink when you're thirsty, isn't always good advice. Water doesn't get enough credit. You can nail your fueling, pacing, gear, and still underperform because you let your hydration slip, especially in long rides or hot conditions. Here's the deal. Losing even 2% of your body weight in sweat leads to decreased performance, higher heart rate, and elevated core temperature. In one study, cyclists who lost approximately 2% of their body weight during a 5-kilometer climb were 5 to 6% slower than when hydrated. And just to be clear, they weren't crawling. They just couldn't hold the same power, even though the effort felt the same. Another study dehydrated riders by 2 to 3% without them knowing, and the result, 5 to 7% less power in a time trial. And it wasn't mental, it was pure physiology. The hotter it gets, the worse it gets. Your ability to cool down tanks, you store more heat, and performance crumbles faster. So what do you do about it? You preload. You start your ride well hydrated. If your pee looks like Mountain Dew, you've got work to do. Then during the ride, you drink about half a litre to a litre per hour, adjusting for heat and sweat rate. In extreme heat, that could jump to 1.5 litres per hour. Use electrolytes, especially sodium. Water alone won't cut it for long rides in the heat. And thirst is a decent guide for shorter rides, but in longer events, thirst lags behind need. So have a plan, not just a bottle. And one practical tip, weigh yourself before and after long rides. Every kilo of body weight equals approximately a liter of fluid. It's not about finishing your ride with the exact weight you started, but you want to avoid dropping more than 2%. Bottom line, fuel early, fuel often, and fuel smart. Carbs are your best friend before, during, and after hard rides. Water and electrolytes keep your engine cool and your heart pumping efficiently. Don't wait until you're bonking or cramping to care about nutrition. Plan your fueling like you plan your intervals, and you'll ride faster, recover better, and actually enjoy the back half of those big days in the saddle. Recovery, repair, and adaptation, also known as gains, that don't happen on the bike, they happen after you get off it. Here's something a lot of cyclists get wrong. They think performance is all about training, but the truth? You don't get stronger during the workout. You get stronger between them. And that's where the magic really happens if you let it. Durability is built on the hours between workouts, not during them. If you're not recovering well, you're not adapting well, and that kills long ride performance. Recovery isn't just kicking your feet up and calling it a day. It's a full strategy. There's rest, nutrition, sleep, and a few optional extras that may or may not involve torturing yourself with a foam roller. And if you're logging real volume or intensity, optimizing recovery isn't a nice to have, it's absolutely essential. Let's break it down. Rest days and easy rides. Cycling breaks you down, recovery builds you back up. That's why easy days and rest days aren't laziness. They're the smart half of the equation. Every hard session creates muscle damage, burns through glycogen, and stresses your nervous system without time to repair. Performance stalls or drops. Studies show that athletes following hard, easy patterns or block training followed by rest improve more than those who try to hit it hard every day. And don't skip those deload weeks either. Every 3 to 5 weeks, drop volume or intensity. Your body needs that chance to consolidate gains and avoid the slow spiral in burnout. Think of it this way. Recovery isn't what takes you away from progress, it unlocks it. Sleep, your legal performance enhancer. Sleep is the most underrated performance tool you have and the most abused. During deep sleep, your body releases hormones like growth hormone, it builds glycogen stores, and it repairs tissues and gets you ready to go again. In other words, sleep is recovery on autopilot if you actually get enough of it. Cyclists who extend sleep to 8 to 9 hours a night recover better and perform better. And one study showed that after just 3 nights of extra sleep, riders maintained time trial performance, while the sleep-deprived group lost ground by about 3% slower over 20 kilometers. 3% might not seem like much until it's the difference between hanging on or getting shelled off the back. So yes, aim for at least 8 hours of quality sleep per night. And if you're training hard and life gets in the way, take a nap. Even short naps have been shown to boost performance and recovery. There's a saying in endurance sports, there's no such thing as overtraining, only underperforming. Okay, that's not technically true, but the point still stands. Hard training without recovery leads to burnout. Hard training with recovery, that's where the real gains live. Gear and equipment maximizing free speed, also known as don't leave watts on the table just because your chain sounds like a rusty accordion. We've talked a lot about training, nutrition, and recovery. Now let's get into the stuff you bolt onto your bike and your body that you can actually make you faster. Because in cycling, free speed is real, and if you care about performance, gear choices matter. We're talking aerodynamics, weight tech, and the little details that can save you seconds or even minutes without needing to increase your fitness. Aerodynamics, your biggest enemy is the air. Here's the truth. At race speeds, 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, aerodynamic drag accounts for up to 90% of the resistance that you are fighting. Most of your effort isn't going through into the ground, it's going into pushing the air out of the way. And the biggest contributor to drag, you. Your body creates about 70 to 80% of the total drag, with the bike making up the rest. So improving your position is the biggest single thing that you can do to ride faster for the same effort. Dropping from an upright position on the hoods to a more compact aero position, even without going full TT mode, can cut drag by 25% or more. That's a massive gain. Now, layer in some gear. An aero helmet can reduce drag by approximately 5%. A tight-fitting jersey or skin suit, instead of the flappy one, can save minutes over a 40-kilometer time trial. Deep section wheels, aero tubing, even overshoes, small gains that add up. Put it all together and a fully optimized aero setup could require 20 to 30 fewer watts to hold 40 kilometers compared to a standard setup. And that's not just for time trialists. Even on solo rides or windy days, aero buys you energy. The faster you go, the more it matters because drag increases exponentially with speed. Wait, it matters when the road tilts up. On flat roads, aero rules, but when the road tilts up, weight becomes king. Every extra kilogram on your bike or your body increases the force needed to climb. On a 5% gradient, shedding just 1 kilogram can give you 0.1 or 0.2 kilometers per hour over a long climb. That really starts to add up. That's why climbers obsess over power to weight ratio, watts per kilo, not just raw watts. But here's the catch. Don't chase weight loss at the expense of power. You want to be able to be lean but not depleted. Strong and light beats skinny and slow every time. As for equipment, lighter wheels and components help, especially when reducing rotating mass, but there's always a trade-off with aerodynamics. Deep wheels are heavier but still faster in most terrain, so choose based on your event profile, not just the scale. And don't forget your tires. Good rolling resistance, proper pressure, and clean drivetrain are easy watts you don't want to waste. A dirty chain alone can cost you 5 to 10 watts. Lube it up, clean it up, and your legs will thank you. You've got the science now, but what if I told you there's a way to put all of this into action every ride, every week for the next 50 days? A plan, a full plan built on everything we've just covered. Check out this video and let's take everything that you've learned here and turn it into real performance.